Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, recorded at River Road Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is brought to you by the ever-popular, always famous Herbal Nerd Society.
The Herbal Nerd Society.
Yeah, it's so great to have something that can support the work that we do. And I love getting feedback from people that are in that. And I love being able to share more information. And Herbal's world is just changing so fast too. It seems like it's a race to try to keep up.
It sure is. Yeah. It sure is. Happily, the Herbal Nerd Society is so cool. They don't need to worry about keeping up.
No, we help them with that. So, yeah, thank you very much for supporting our podcasts and the books that we write and the website that we have. And Herbal Nerd Society is how that happens.
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And remember, if you want to join the Herbal Nerd Society, it's easy to do, thepracticalherbalist.com, and go to the top tab. It says Join the Herbal Nerd Society. So if you're looking to support herbalism and herbs and getting information out to everybody, including yourself, then joining the Herbal Nerd Society is a really great way to do that.
We appreciate your support. And please remember, we really benefit from the reviews that you write, not only for the books, but also for our podcast that helps people so that they can learn more about herbs. It's so important. I personally think for people to have a diversity of healing tactics and modalities to access, it makes the world a better place.
Indeed.
All right, on with the show. Herbal science, like the plants themselves, is constantly evolving. In the cannabis industry, that's truly an understatement. Today we're talking with Andy Harpole, owner and operator of Emerald Valley Growers, about the advances in CBD and growing cannabis with good science and good medicine in mind. Now here are your hosts, Candace Hunter and Sue Lupe.
I'm Candace Hunter.
And I'm Sue Lupe.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. Welcome back, Andy.
Hi, it's good to be back.
So last time we were talking to you and you were just giving us the lowdown and dirty about the cannabis industry and you're part of it. And I think I would love to hear from you. This, for people that might be tuning in for the first time, maybe they didn't hear the first show. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
We are a recreational producer in Eugene, Oregon. I own and operate a 6,000 square foot indoor grow facility and try to produce the best medicinal cannabis in Oregon. I won't claim that I do, but we try to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. But your fans claim that you do.
We have a lot of fans, and I love all of them. We'll keep doing the best we can to keep producing that.
Yeah, the pictures that I've seen on the, was it hashtag Emerald Valley Growers on Instagram?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Really? Yeah. What do you mean?
Just the pictures of all the plants that he has, all the buds and all the things. They're like, you wouldn't believe that they're the same plant. It's like looking at 80 different orchids.
They're all different colors and different heights.
Yeah,
and
just
shapes.
Crazy. So it's very artistic actually. So if you get a chance, you're on Instagram, Emerald Valley, hashtag Emerald Valley Growers. It's pretty
yeah, and
impressive.
you can find the main page at EV Growers.
Yeah, EV Growers.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there because it's pretty cool.
Well, and that's actually bringing out the way the strains all look. So many of them look so different, and it's almost like last time you talked about it being almost like multi-cropping because they're each one's different. They all have different needs. They all have different.
So all have different odors, terpenes, looks, the way they grow. Yeah. It is like growing a complete garden of different types of vegetables, and every one of them needs different needs, and they want different things, and they react to different things.
But they're all the same. They're all the same genus. And they're all either sativa or indica, or is there another one?
Hybrid.
Or a hybrid of the...
Which is what the majority of the plants are out there these days because they've crossed them so many times. There's very few pure sativa or pure indica. Most of them have got a little bit of each in them.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And you guys do a lot of scientific testing. And you guys had a revelation not too long ago, right?
We started finding out some of our strains had high levels of CBGA in them.
So what is CBGA? I know Sue's like dying to get into the molecular structure here.
Well, we should first find out the THC and CBD. Can you give a quick description of what that is?
So CBD is basically just another cannabinoid that has medicinal purposes. THC or THCA also has medicinal purposes, but it has the psychoactive chemicals in it that affect your body in multiple ways. I mean, from a head high to a body high. Therefore, you got to be 21 to be able to consume it.
Right. Yeah, CBD is the one that people typically look for if they're working with children.
Yes.
And then it's also used a lot for, I think, anti-inflammatory, if I remember right.
CBD, among others,
and a lot of people in the industry really believe that CBD works better with a little bit of THC in it.
Yeah.
Because the cannabinoids all do work together.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that as well, that it's best to have a very small percentage perhaps, but a little bit, because it changes how quickly the CBD activates and the duration of its effectivity in the body.
Yes.
So this new one, CBGA.
CBGA.
New letters.
CBGA is the mother of all cannabinoids. The best way to explain it is it works like stem cells in our body. When CBGA decarboxylates, it can form THCA, CBDA, CBCA, and CBG. This works just like stem cells can turn into a heart cell, a muscle cell, a bone cell, or a blood cell. So just like stem cell need more research, CBGs need more research done. But when we're all talking about each cannabinoid having different medicinal effects, CBGA technically has them all wrapped up into one.
So if you have a strain that's high in CBGA, that means it's got the potential to go in any direction you want it to go when you harvest the bud. Is that?
Yeah, and that's what we're doing is we're harvesting the bud. We haven't been researching it long enough because we just discovered it about 4 or 5 months ago, the high levels of CBGA. But it could have other effects on the body. And when it's concentrated, it could have more effects. But there's a lot of research that's going to have to be done.
So, you say you discovered it and you didn't even know. So how did you discover it?
So this used to not even exist on the tests when we get our test results back. A lot of these strains possibly have this in them already. There's certain things that cause cannabinoids to produce higher results in each area of the cannabinoids, depending on how you grow them.
So you would be talking about the same kinds of factors that farmers look at, things like food and placement, where they are, like in the field. It would be like, oh, is it on the north field or the south field? Is it, did I put this cover crop down to feed the ground before it? So, the whole gamut of stuff. So you do
temperature, everything.
Temperature, humidity, there's different things that can help form different cannabinoids.
Right. So
like I say, we discovered it because we noticed it some higher levels on a test.
Right.
We started doing more R&D research with different plants in our rooms and different strains to try to discover why they're producing this and if it was just a fluke in the testing.
Right.
So we did testing at other labs.
Yeah.
We checked other farms that were doing testing at the same labs. And of course, R&D'ing 30 strains in our building to see which ones were producing more CBGA.
Nice.
We have 3 or 4 that produce high levels of it. And I say high levels, it's 3 to 4%. That's high for a CBGA. Whereas most flower will produce, or most cannabis will produce 0.03.
Wow,
zero.
That's significantly
That
different.
is a huge, that is really big.
Yeah.
So is this common amongst growers? I mean, to have this many?
Not to my knowledge.
Interesting.
And like I say, it's something that I don't see regularly on testing because the wholesale that I work with deals with so many farms. It gives me an idea that they are not seeing it because it's not being seen on test results.
Interesting. And I mean, I'm not going to ask you what it is because I know you're still working on even just narrowing down what's affecting it and all of that.
We have some ideas of what we believe is increasing the CBGA in these certain strains.
Right.
Because we used to not see it in certain strains, and now we do based on some of the things we're doing in our building.
Well, and the scientific approach that you take to all growing, do it for all of the plants that you're working with, I think that's part of how you were able to even recognize this and start to figure out, I know you're still in the process of trying to figure out what's causing it. And so you can't really talk about that yet. But I love the fact that you guys are you document. You're meticulous with your documentation on what you're doing.
Documentation, because if we don't do that, we can't. It's not real research. You can't figure out how you got to that from point A to point B if you don't do that. So that when I say we're doing R&D, we're documenting everything from the seed till it's harvested until it's headed to the wholesaler to get put on a shelf. So
nice.
Wow, this is the beginning of a huge revolution in this field, just not only with what we're learning about the plants, but how they synthesize in our body systems. And I wonder, do you know what this CBGA does other than trigger tremendous growth, or we're still learning?
We're still learning right now. Mm-hmm. And because you're not seeing a lot of it and there's not enough research in it, it's going to take a while to find out what it actually does. And it's hard to prove what cannabis does for people in general now,
right?
Except for the results that people see from taking it.
Right.
So to pinpoint this one cannabinoid, it's going to take some time to figure it out. They're trying to achieve that in the hemp currently to just produce this CBGA.
So tell us again, remind us all, hemp, cannabis, marijuana.
So hemp
what is this?
Hemp and marijuana are both cannabis, but one is hemp and one is marijuana.
So
why?
And
previous.
Why? So the way that so one doesn't produce THCA over a certain content. Therefore, it's considered hemp.
If it's lower, if it has lower THC or THCA.
And it has to be, right now, technically it has to be below 0.3% THC to be considered hemp.
0.3, so a third of a single percent.
Yes.
It's a really, really tiny amount.
It's a very tiny amount.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that plant won't produce that at some point in its life.
But when it's harvested.
So
when it's harvested,
Does that mean that the hemp seeds that we've been eating for the last 40 years, well before cannabis was legal, would technically have probably had some really minuscule amount of THC in them?
If it did, it wouldn't matter if it wasn't carboxylated.
You would have had
If it's not activated, then it won't matter. And actually,
and it's hulled.
Back whenever they used to grow it, they used to feed it to the cows. And which then got into the milk, and they believed back then that it probably had medicinal effects on the people that drank the milk. As for the THC, the CBD levels 100 years ago were so low that there probably was no THC in it, or so little that it wouldn't show up. The THC has been bred into these plants. The CBD has been bred into them to get it higher. Back in those days, it was probably 1 to 3%. Now you see numbers as high as 14, 15, and 20% CBD.
Wow. Right. If you're growing something for paper.
They were growing it for paper.
Paper
it was
and cloth
industrial.
and
textiles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rope.
Yes. Which has been around forever.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they classified, marijuana as, it's cannabis, and hemp was cannabis too. So both of them were considered illegal. Because hemp can still produce THC. Small levels, but it still can produce THC.
Well, and of course, I'm sure a lot of people in the background listening to this podcast says, that's because it threatened the paper industry and the timber barons. And
I'm sure there's a lot of lobbyists.
Calm that down for just a second.
There was other things there.
Yep. So anyway, back to the CBGA. So you're just finding that in a certain amount, and when did the testing for CBGA start?
So it all depends on the labs, because as these labs have become more educated and sophisticated, their equipment has been allowing them to find other cannabinoids that they used to not look for, because it used to be just THC, THCA, and CBD. Now they're actually looking for these other cannabinoids, and they're giving us a
Nice.
a wider spectrum of the cannabinoids on testing. And when they started doing that, most of them just used to say not available. There was none there.
Mm.
None available.
We've learned not accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
They just weren't detecting it.
they weren't detecting it,
Mhm.
yes. And
Yeah.
so as they've improved their science in their testing,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got better equipment, they're finding these other cannabinoids.
Mhm.
There's a possibility that they don't exist in a lot of the strains
Mm-hmm.
or in the grows based on the way they're grown.
Hmm.
I see there's stuff that we're doing that we think is increasing that CBGA,
Mhm.
but
That's just-
we can't prove it yet based on our R&D testing.
Yeah.
It's very likely that it is, though.
Right. So have you noticed, and I'm kind of expecting the answers you haven't noticed, but have you noticed a difference in how those strains, what people report about their experience when they've used the strains that are higher in CBGA as opposed to the rest of the strains that you grow?
So we haven't. One of the other side effects is they're a higher THC potency.
Ah.
So when it comes to R&D testing, it's hard to get information from public as a whole because it affects everybody differently.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do R&D sample testing at our building, so I can utilize that with the people that work with me, and I
Right.
can see how the effects are. It's hard to tell because the THC overrides the CBGA
Right.
whenever they use it.
Right. Makes
So-
sense. Yeah. So it also means that if it were particularly good for a specific type of condition like anxiety or whatever,
Fibromyalgia.
fibromyalgia or
Mhm.
something, you would have to find someone who has that. Then you would have to test that plus other strains with similarly high levels of THC. And that starts getting into we need actual
That's what universities need to be doing. That's
Universities,
not your
yes.
job.
yeah,
Yes.
that's
Figure out the
that's
growing
beyond. Yeah.
We're just kind of discovering these things.
Yeah.
We need somebody that can spend the time and the education, the money to find out more information about this.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, as they allow them to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On human trials.
In human trials, yes.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, they didn't do testing, and they have been doing testing on rats and mice and whatever, but as far as the psychoactive effects, then you got human trials, and you'll
Yeah.
probably have a lot of people, if you're interested in putting together a human trial, volunteer for that.
Probably.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you would.
That is
Yeah.
my guess.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably don't even have to pay them.
Have you been reading up on how this is affecting people with PTSD or?
And I have, and like I said, they would like to say that certain cannabinoids are doing certain things for people.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabinoids affect everyone differently,
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard to get a strong baseline for what each one of these will do, including CBGA, because
Right.
a lot of the CBD, CBGA, CBNs don't affect you in a psychoactive way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to tell what they're actually doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the
You actually just will
undevelopment.
notice the issues you had are gone, or that you're not.
Or I'm sleeping at night.
diminishing.
It's
Yay.
not
Yeah.
like taking a drug that, a prescription drug that all of a sudden,
Right.
you can feel the drug and okay, the pain slowly, you feel it go away.
Mhm.
Right.
It can affect you in a way that where it just all of a sudden you don't have the pain anymore.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't know when it went away, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just sort of comes into your awareness.
Mhm.
Whereas THC, you're going to
Yeah.
feel it like the
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, you'll feel it. Your
yeah, like
knees.
the prescription
Your
drug.
knees might just stop working, or
I should blink. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's so interesting how we've had so much more development in pain. Like before, it's just
Mm-hmm.
our whole thing about pain is just make sure that you don't feel pain at all, not work on why the pain is there. And
Yeah.
when I went to college back in the dark ages, then it was just pain was just because of the nerves and brain, and that was it. And now we learn that it's far more than that. You know, there's tendon pain, and it has a lot to do with the brain, but there's far more than just your nerve endings. Figuring out how that starts the stuff that happens within tissues and different parts of that. The reason that we know so much more about pain and this is so much more helpful is the research that they're doing, and I'm fascinated to see where all of this is going to be leading to.
Well, yeah, and the CBGA, it might be a cannabinoid that takes actual trials with human trials of people that have certain ailments and running them through months and months of testing with this cannabinoid before they actually, with the placebo to actually know what it's doing.
Yeah. But the thing I find fascinating about it and kind of thrilling is that if it truly does act like stem cells act, but it's a plant form, when it starts to interact with the human body, I wonder if what will end up happening is it becomes the cannabinoid that you need.
Right.
So it transforms itself within your body, or you're with the interactions with your body, because the cannabinoids are, they're all fitting into cells that we have in our endocannabinoid system. Yeah.
And with that stem cell theory that you've got there, the notion that it could be used for degenerative diseases, osteoarthritis, for example, just one of the many things that are dental diseases, the macular degeneration, all of that could be a fabulous ally for working with those. We've pretty much just had nothing but surgery, and then even then it's luck of the draw oftentimes.
Yeah. And with the stem cell research, they can only do so much research with that because of the lack of the stem cells. This is something that hopefully they will, because they can have access to it, they will look at it and try to research it more. And I believe they are.
Yeah. Phytostem cells. It's far too attractive for scientists to let that one go.
I hope so.
Because we really kind of hit a wall as far as what we can do with some of the, just like you said, the human stem cells.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to try to pull the parts of my brain back into my head right now.
I know. Sue's mind is blown.
Yes.
There's some CBD that might help you for that.
Yeah, really. Good luck. You need a plunger.
Well, it seems like anytime that I'm looking at the news feeds, that stuff that comes up on this, there's I think it's CBN for sleep.
Oh.
It's like the new take that for sleep now. That's the thing.
What is that? CBN?
It's another cannabinoid.
It's another cannabinoid, and I've heard some just recent stories from some people that didn't want to consume a product that had a lot of THC in it, but they wanted some of the effects of this plant. So they did get some CBD, and they said they've slept one of the best nights they've slept in the last 15 years.
Nice.
And so I don't know if that product had a high CBN in it. I didn't actually see what he actually purchased, but they can help with sleep and other ailments.
So
if I remember right, isn't CBD and CBN are very, very similar molecules, and THC has actually got not significantly, but a significantly different structure.
It is different. It's a different cannabinoid completely.
Yeah. Kind of like the many strains, the cannabinoids themselves can be very different from one another.
And the CBGs, the CBDs, the CBNs, those exist in the plant, and all the marijuana, cannabis plants throughout the entire cycle.
Okay.
The THC is formed at the end of the cycle.
Which is why everyone's so big on the bud.
Yes.
And you got to finish it just right and all of that.
You did. There's a magic window.
Yeah.
To get the highest peak.
Are people starting to formulate some of these now that we're knowing a little bit more with other plants?
I'm sure they are. I've been looking at that myself. Sometimes I haven't got enough, since I just started researching this.
Right.
I have not had enough time to look into the other plants that produce cannabinoids and see if they have similar testing results, because I don't know if anybody's doing any other testing results.
Yeah.
This whole testing came from this product becoming legalized.
Right.
And monitored and tested
Yeah.
to keep the public safe, and that's where we're discovering these.
Yeah.
Whereas a product that doesn't have THC in it may never go under that kind of testing unless somebody does the research to connect
Yeah.
the two in some way.
Yeah. That makes
Because there's
sense.
other plants out there that produce
There
a
are.
trichome
Yeah.
just like cannabis does.
Yep.
It may not have CBD or THC in it.
Well,
Mhm.
blending things. I have patients that come in and they say, I'm using cannabis to control whatever, fill in the blank. But I found one of the problems is my anxiety will go up when the THC is really high because I start to believe the things that I imagine. Like,
Mhm.
oh, well, in that case, here's another herb that you might want to not smoke it, but add to this as if it's a formula. And I know I'm not the herbalist, the only herbalist doing that, but there's a
Yeah.
variety of other people that are taking it. For example, if they're chemotherapy, and the cannabis is fabulous for keeping them eating so that they don't die of starvation.
Mhm.
But there are other things that we add to their program, herbs, to deal with some of the other stuff that cannabis is not controlling, or it affects them because they're so slight of weight or whatever. There's a variety.
Mhm.
But I think that the field is, as we're learning more about this, that the field is wide open for that kind of blending. And now that people aren't just smoking it all the time, they're taking in edibles, they're taking in tinctures, as you say, oils. That's another way to add more of these herbs and blends to really recognize the diversity of the patients and the issues that they have.
And I think you're going to find that a lot more in like the tinctures.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because there is
It's more
typically
controlled.
it's more controlled, but there's typically other things added into the tinctures that can help
Mitigate
Yeah.
some of
mitigate
the,
some
yeah.
of this
Mhm.
versus your super extracts that
Yeah.
are just plain THC and
Mhm.
CBDs. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
they are. It's
Right.
just a pure extract of the plant.
So do you grow specific plants or specific strains in your facility for CBD, high CBD versus not? I guess I'm getting a little confused. It's like, okay, so you have THC, you have CBD, and I know that some plants are high in one or high in the other, and some plants are together. But like, are you able to harvest all the product you need from one plant? Or, do you know what I mean?
So it really comes down to it's all the same plant, but it's different types of the cannabis plant, different strains.
Sure.
And then every strain is going to have, you could have thousands of phenos. Whereas if you cross two different strains, you crossed a male plant with this female plant, you're going to get hundreds of different phenos of that same strain, which could take on characteristics of that male plant or characteristics of the female plant. Or it could take characteristics of a previous plant that it was crossed with. Some plants produce high THC, some plants produce high CBD.
Mhm.
And to answer the question before, do we grow plants just for the high CBD? We used to. Unfortunately, the market controls how we grow at our building, and the demand was not there. The hemp industry has filled that gap so that we didn't have to focus on it. It's not that we didn't want to,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
the product didn't go anywhere, unfortunately.
Right.
Do you see the market changing now that more and more people are finding that the CBD is helpful for them versus?
I think they are. It's opened the market up to a lot more people that don't want to deal with the psychoactive effects of the THC.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that don't want.
I have a friend who's somewhat semi-conservative, and he was like really nervous to go, and how he was going to get something for his wife, and he had to go into a shop and he had to register and he had to do this whole thing. And I said, well, I think you could get some CBD creams in some other places where you didn't have to do that. He's like, really?
Yes, and there is a lot of shops that you can go into at any age right now and go buy those products.
Our chiropractor has a whole line of salves at different percentages based on, whether you're light activity, medium, or sport.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as you just go up the scale, so does the price. I mean, 2 ounces of sport CBD cream is like $60. It's
Yes.
it's not cheap.
Yeah.
There's a very large market in CBD. I think there's a larger market in CBD than there is in THC.
Yeah, and that's what, I guess I was thinking, but like you said, the hemp industry is doing that.
The hemp industry is where the focus is, because the recreational market the demand is not there in the recreational market.
Right.
People want to get high, not help with their arthritis.
They do. It's just how this market's evolved. Back when there was medical dispensaries, they looked at this product differently. They were focused more on the medicinal effects. It has become more of a recreational use product.
Yeah.
In the last 4.5 years. And it's evolved that way. And that's where the market drives what we grow, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And what's fortunate is the hemp market is taking over that CBD market so that people have access to it, because the access to it was very low.
Yeah, I mean, I bought some CBD glycerin extract at the local tea shop.
Yes,
I mean,
you can buy a cup of tea with drops of CBD in it.
Yes,
or you can buy the little bottle and drop it
yourself. Right at the tea shop.
Yes. So it's more available.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a strong hemp industry in Oregon, or is that something
the hemp industry is very strong.
It's something I never even hear about. I mean, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's bigger than
so it was like,
people realize it is.
Yeah.
It's growing rapidly. Yeah. Oregon will probably be the largest hemp producer this year in the United States.
Yeah.
Colorado was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more professional too.
It is. It's not as heavily regulated, so it makes it a lot less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's still expensive to grow, it's a lot less expensive to grow than cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I recently went to a Women Leaders in Cannabis I guess one of their it's a group of women, and they had this nice little restaurant that they kind of cordoned off for themselves, and they did a presentation on working on your resume and how to present yourself, and even doing professional photography and doing the whole, like, these people had some gloss to them, not like I was expecting to come in and see a bunch of hayseeds, but it was really this is what we do for a living, and these are the people that we help, and we want people to trust us. So it was fascinating.
Yes. Well, and the hemp with the Farm Bill that passed has allowed it into all states, that once they regulate it in every state, it will grow across the country. Oregon is ahead of that because they've been growing it here for the last 4 years here too.
And more.
And more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hemp's been growing here for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is there's less information about hemp than there is about cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of these cannabinoids that are going to be found in hemp as they cross them and force out the THC from the crossbreeding. They're also going to be kind of creating more cannabinoids as they cross and breed these.
Creating them or discovering them?
It's going to be discovering. They're not really creating them, they're discovering them.
Uh-huh.
It could be creating them. We don't know, actually, since we don't know whether they were there before or how they arrived.
I think they're there. It's just a matter of
figuring out how to recognize them.
Yeah, figure out how to recognize them, figure out how to increase them in that type of plant or that strain, that pheno.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got to ask this question, even though it's probably a ridiculous question. Does the smell of the cannabis have any correlation to how much high you're going to get, or the effect of the cannabis on your body?
Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. So that is in the terpenes that are in the cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
They all have an odor, and they all have different odors, and that's all the different terpenes that are in there and the way they're combined. People that are not accustomed to it will relate it to skunk smells.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have to actually then consume something that smells like diesel fuel if you don't want to.
No, there's a lot of them that smell like diesel.
Yes, you could choose
And
the
a lot of people are
non-diesel.
actually attracted to that diesel smell.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why.
I don't understand it.
Raised in
I
gas,
drive diesel,
maybe.
so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that older people like myself, they notice the change in the smell. Before there
Mhm.
was more of a uniform smell.
Yeah.
And
so that
now
would be
it's-
in now that there's there's thousands of strains out there.
right.
Every one of them has a different odor,
Yeah.
whereas back then there was a lot less strains,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
stuck with certain ones. People like that really strong skunky
Mm-hmm.
smell,
Mhm.
and that's what was
Musky. It was
Musky,
like
yes.
muskier
Musky.
before, and
Yeah.
now you go glue. What is that? You know, it was
Yeah.
it's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
got
It's
strains that
interesting.
smell like blueberries, got strains that smell like oranges.
Yeah.
So
That sounds
in
a lot more
Oregon,
pleasant.
there's a lot of fruity terpene type products.
Mhm.
That makes
So-
sense. There's a lot of fruity people in
There is.
Oregon.
And that's how we get the mail, ladies and gentlemen.
When I visited your facility, just in the little warehousey section, not even into the, I've never even seen where you grow. And I was just blown away by the smell.
And I don't smell it at all.
Right. And I was like, how do you work in this environment?
So that's something I used to, when we were first getting into it, we'd go over to somebody's house. We could smell it a quarter mile away.
Mhm.
Right.
If I'm in my building now, I can't smell it.
Because you've gotten so used to
My
it.
nose is
Just
It
blocked
gave
out.
up.
yeah.
Gave up.
If I leave and I'm in very clean, crisp, cold air or something, and then I
Mhm.
come back, I can smell it.
Mhm.
Right.
The only time I really smell it is when we're harvesting.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
terpenes are getting broke on the product,
Oh yeah,
And
and they
it's-
just
you could practically see
erode
it.
through the entire. You almost
Yeah.
can through
Yeah.
the building. It is extremely strong.
Yeah.
And you haven't smelled that.
No,
it will,
I
it will
know.
knock you over.
Yeah.
I remember I was in his office for 15 minutes as we were talking about something for shirts or something. And I swear to God, when I left your facility, I got in my car. I'm like, I got the munchies.
The terpenes got you.
Yeah.
Because those terpenes do attach to everything.
Wow,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, they do.
I was
Yeah.
I was like, how does he work in that environment? That's just amazing.
You
I've
get
been
used to it.
I've been in coffee roasters that don't smell like that. I'm like, wow.
Oh, that's fascinating. Huh. Well, thank you for being with us and for being kind enough to visit us for a second time. People can check out your first show that we interviewed you on, and that was 182. We'll have to go back in our history a little bit. And Andy, tell us how people can get a hold of you, please.
They can find us on emeraldvalleygrowers.com.
Mhm.
You can see some of our products on Instagram at EV Growers. And you can look on our website to see where our products are sold at shops.
Right, because you can't buy direct from you.
Cannot buy direct from us.
Mhm.
We give it to a wholesaler, Sweet Life Distribution, and they distribute it to the shops.
Nice.
There you go.
Thanks again. It's a pleasure.
It's nice being here again.
As always,
Put
an herb on
it.
the statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.